the idea of equality is something that's been going around in my mind for a while. It's just because you see one or two Black people, you don't necessarily understand what it's taken for them to get to that place. It won't be necessarily the same as you. We've both done the training, but unfortunately, with the way that the world works and the things that we have to face, the training is not enough sometimes. You know, you can do the training, but then you'll face the financial block, and then you'll face the visa block and the immigration block. And sometimes you only be able to enter a country to show up to the race. Those are the kind of things that the West doesn't necessarily understand or think about. And it's a perspective that I hope a lot more people do think about and try to make easier.
Movement. Branding for the bike industry. Together with thought leaders of our industry and branding specialists, we're discussing the art of emotional brand building. In our second English episode, we sat down with Duke Agyapong, a standout creative and one of Rapha's prominent brand faces in recent years. Duke brings a fresh perspective to cycling, blending roles as a model, writer, self-taught bike mechanic, and advocate for inclusivity. He shares his journey from London's fixed-gear racing scene to road cycling in the Alps. We discuss how Duke's experiences with ADHD and autism influence his creativity, helping him connect with audiences in authentic ways that resonate beyond the typical cycling narrative. Duke's advocacy focuses on representing excluded groups, challenging brands to rethink inclusivity as more than just aesthetics, but as a fundamental part of brand culture. Our conversation highlights the importance of brands like Rapha investing in grassroots community initiatives, with Duke sharing his vision of an outdoor velodrome in Ghana, an ambitious project designed to open doors for aspiring athletes who lack resources. So without further ado, here are Duke, Mike, and me, Tim. Hey, Duke.
How's it going?
Welcome to our little podcast show. How's it?
Oh, good, actually. And yourselves?
Yeah, very good. Very good. So maybe you could tell us and the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're doing, because I read a lot of things on the internet about you. It doesn't really seem that you fit in some sort of box.
Yeah.
Maybe you can clarify this a little bit for us.
Yeah, so my name is Duke. I live in London. I'm 32. I do a lot of things, and I find that sometimes hard to put it into one box. It's like the jack of all trades, but I can do a lot of things well. So I model, I'm a writer, I make content, video, photos, and I fix bikes too, like self-taught bike mechanic. I work with a few brands like Factor, Rapha, and more than anything, I advocate for those who may not have a voice in cycling. So people of color, non-binary people, all those kind of things. So yeah, intersectionality is one of the most important things to me. So I integrate that into my work. So it's kind of hard to put it into one box, but I can do a lot.
So what would you say is your work then particularly?
I would say I am a creative.
So when people reach out to you, let's say brands reach out to you, what are they seeking for? What work will you do for them?
It depends, honestly. So with me, it's like, if depending on the brand, say it's Rapha, for example, with Rapha, yeah, I'm an ambassador and I'm a model as well with some of their. I've been on quite a few campaigns over the last couple of years, even as an athlete. But with me, it's if I work with a brand, it has to be like working with the actual people rather than the brand itself. So it's creating communities, it's connecting to people less fortunate than I am. It's connecting to the people who don't have the support they need. It's those kind of things. It's creating the community where things are equal, because there's not many people of color in cycling. I mean, given its history as well. So it's, when I work with a brand, it's making the change. It's more than just having my face on something. It's contributing towards change and connecting to people.
It would be, for me, it would be interesting how you got to collaborate with Rapha. Was that something you felt drawn to, or did they come up to you as you make this awesome content, or how did that?
It happened so organically, funnily enough. Before the Rapha stuff, I've always been riding bikes. I was hosting like alley cats, like street races. I was hosting 10-year parties for MASH. I was doing stuff in the community. And how I got in with Rapha was a person who worked there, who was a front of house. he was one of my friends and we used to ride bikes together. And one day I went in, they were having a casting, and they're like, "Oh, we like your face." And then like a couple of weeks later, I was in Switzerland riding my first mountain on the bike, and I was like, "This is crazy." And it just happened like that. It wasn't necessarily, "We want you to do this and this." It's like, "Hey, we've never met before. We like you, and let's see what we can create." And here we are.
Was this was this basically also your moment when you moved from a track bike to like a normal road bike? Was Rapha maybe like the start for this?
Definitely, because before that, I never thought about riding a road bike in Switzerland up any of the passes. I've never seen any of these things, and I also didn't know how hard it would be. I didn't come off the bike. I only came off the bike once for a little break, and then I carried on. But riding up mountains it's mind blowing because you're suffering so much, and you look left and you look right, and you're like, this is absolutely beautiful. You wouldn't get that just from being in the inner city. So it definitely opened up my world, and it made racing a lot more consistent too, because with fixed gear racing at the time, it was Red Hook Crit, and that was like 3 times a year. You had world-class athletes and messengers coming to this one place, and you never know who could win. And that was the beauty of it. But being able to train for that, you need more racing, and it's more available on a road bike. So it made sense.
Did it stick with you, road biking, right after that? Or did you put the road bike aside first and then maybe picked it up a little bit later then?
No, it just stuck with me completely. I went from, as soon as I did that, I started racing road bikes. I raced category 4. So over here in the UK, there's categories you have to go through. And I'd never raced before. So I raced on my road bike like 3-4 times, and I won 2 races straight away. And I went straight to Cat 3, which is a bit insane. So as soon as I started racing it, I was hooked. But the thing for me is, whenever I fall out of love with road cycling, I change the discipline. So for me, it's like, okay, I've done too many miles on my road bike. I'm not enjoying it as much. Go ride some gravel. If you're not enjoying gravel, ride your track bike. If you're not enjoying a track bike, ride your road bike. It's just another way to make it shift. So I love them all still.
Yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing about bike sports. You can really shift in between disciplines. But what I heard from you when I was listening to a short podcast where you were in, that you were talking about road biking, and you weren't like, at that point, it sounded like you weren't really up for riding road bikes, and you more like, I don't know, you were more like riding your track bike, riding mountains with your track bike, and you were talking about that this is kind of special and something you would like kind of support.
Yeah, riding it, once you start putting in big miles, like once I started training properly for racing, like doing 15 hours plus on a bike, for example, in a week, it's very hard to do that on a track bike. It's a lot. You can't coast, you know? Like I remember the first time I did my journey from London to Cambridge, and that's roughly 80 miles. And then I did the return. That was 160 miles almost on a track bike. Afterwards, you're like, I hate bicycles. And I was like, make it easier for yourself, you know? Eventually, the road bike grew on me, and you can go a lot further. And it's not, it's just as hard, but you can coast. The freewheel is amazing. And brakes.
Makes sense.
And how did you get into biking initially?
It's through skateboarding. So with skateboarding, the culture with fixed gear is like, they're almost synonymous. So you'll usually see something on a single speed or a track bike around somewhere. And from that, I was like, let me try this bike. And as soon as I rode the fixed gear, it made sense. Everyone always talks about how you feel one with the bike and all those kind of things. And for me, it just clicked. It was something that I knew I could be good at straight away. So, yeah.
So you were busy doing tricks on the track bike first before you started racing then?
Exactly that. Tricks, learning how to completely strip a bike from like frame forks to putting it back together again, all self-taught, learning how to build frames. So I'd hang around like bike shops and try to understand how to build a frame from like steel. So welding and all those kind of things, from fillet brazing to TIG welding. It was just a lot of information that I just dived straight into.
So you welded your frames yourself?
I know, never welded myself, but I've always observed how to, because I respect the craft of frame builders.
So did the bike riding replace skateboarding for you at that point then, or?
100%. Like I still have skateboards, but I can't tell you the last time I touched them. I could still drop in, I can do an ollie, a 180, but bikes first.
Okay, and as you say, like these communities, they're kind of like aligned, but the others, you think so too? Or because that was anyways a question I wanted to ask you, that if you think that the skateboard community could learn from the bike community, or the other way around, or is
I think
is it so similar?
it's more so the other way around, because with skateboarding, it can be quite cliquey. However, it's usually based on a skill of what you've done or things like that. But when I first was trying to get into the cycling community, it was quite tough because if you didn't have the right kit, if you didn't have the right bike, if you didn't do everything the way that everybody else did, you were ousted. And I had quite a few years of that. But the thing that I found the most interesting is when I first started like modeling with Rapha and cycling became cool almost. It was like this thing where there wasn't so much of a pretentious thing anymore. It was, we're both on bikes. And once you can break that barrier of, rather than thinking that, oh, that person can't ride with me because they're slow or they haven't got this bike or that kind of kit, it's, we're both here and we know what bikes mean to us. We know what they can do. We know how far they can take us. Why would you want to keep that just for yourself? You got to share that joy. So that's what I feel like cycling can learn from skateboarding.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel the same. Like as it opening up right now, it becomes more a thing to ride your bike. Here you see people riding their bikes all over the place, and of course they're all in the best clothings and all that stuff. That whole lifestyle is a thing too. But still, I feel like when sports like bike riding in this example open up for a big community, then an outcome of that would be that people get more easily included.
Exactly.
But as the skateboard community is a little bit more still a subculture, I would say that they do it better there because it's still cliquey, but it's easier to get in. I think they more welcome the people. But yeah, these people, like for you, for example, now get into bike riding too. And I think they share these experiences and live it in the bike community. Maybe that's also a reason that's evolving in some way.
For me as well, it kind of is eye-opening because when you see brands like Rapha having a collab with Palace, a skateboarding brand, you know that it's going in the right direction as well. And like you see the EF guys riding in the peloton with like streetwear brands like from skateboarding in the pro peloton. You've never seen that before prior to that. And to be able to have that connection and understanding, insane. So it's definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that Panormal basically is started by the same guy who owns Woodwood, the fashion brand. You know,
yes,
it's also crazy. And as far as I'm concerned, these MAP guys, they come from graphic design somehow. You know, it's all these influences that now take place because for some reason, biking now has created this platform that is, you know, it has loosened up, and Rapha, I believe, also had a big influence on that when they started with their films and everything, showing that biking, and especially road biking, doesn't need to be this like stiff community where everybody's just training for the race. There is no smile on the face. There is no, you know, there's just this determination for the sport and for results. And I think that has opened up a lot because cycling in the end is a beautiful thing when you go out on your bike and you know, this endorphins kick in and stuff like that. You know, it is quite the opposite from being this boxed in, straightforward kind of lifestyle. You know, so yeah.
I was going to say it's like linked to mental health as well because even in the pro peloton today, a lot of the cyclists who race full time, they're talking about how they're not enjoying riding bikes anymore, but they're prioritizing looking after their minds first. Ethan Hayter, his younger brother, people like that, being so open about these things, and that connection of smiling whilst you're on the bike and like not just training for the race. You have to enjoy it because if we're not enjoying it, what's the point? Like, you know, Nobody's forcing us to
Exactly.
turn these pedals as hard as we need to. No one's forcing us to take them to places we want to go, but you have to enjoy the journey, and it's not all suffering. Suffering is cool when you're training, but keep it there, keep it in the training part. Enjoy the
Right.
race.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, definitely. So what does riding mean to you then these days now?
It does everything for me, honestly. It sounds so cliched, but it's the thing that keeps me motivated because cycling opened up my world as soon as I jumped on a bike. Being able to go from A to B to being in Switzerland to racing bikes in San Francisco to riding in Italy. I was like, I've met people, I've crossed paths with people that I never would have before if I didn't pick up the bike. So for me, the bike is a tool to connect to people. And I'm pretty fit and I'm quite good at it. So for me, it's if I can train and I can show up more, I can meet more people, I can build a bigger community and connect people with the right people to keep cycling growing and keep it in a positive space.
So has it helped with your the mental issues that you're talking very openly about? Has cycling basically helped you like reshape your character and be out there, because maybe with those
Like ailments or blocks.
yeah, with those health issues, normally you would say people maybe stay inside the house, they don't want to connect with people, they'd be more like introverts and stuff like that. Would you say cycling has helped you to be not like that?
Definitely. It's really simple. I remember when I've had tougher times where it was harder to leave the house because with depression and anxiety, it can be quite debilitating. But cycling has been that thing where you just have to turn the pedals. It doesn't have to make sense yet, just turn the pedals. And one of those things for me was, okay, rather than thinking about doing 3 hours on the bike, for example, just go outside for 5 minutes. If you feel like stopping for a coffee, have a coffee, but you've made it outside. And the thing about cycling and movement in general, it takes you from staying stuck inside of your head to physically moving outside of that. And when you do that and you look around and you take the things around you inside, it kind of helps you reframe. And that's what cycling does for me mentally now. It took me a long time to get that process together because before it would be you have to suffer to distract yourself from what's going on in here. But it should never be that. It should always be, it's a tool. It should never be something to make you feel sad or make you feel worse. So yeah, it helps big time.
So you would say you see it as some sort of therapy, riding a bike?
Definitely. It helps me process. It helps me make sense of things. It helps me physically make sense of things too and understand the world and see the world rather than just staying stuck in here.
So was that a shift of thinking the way you think about this? Because I heard you saying that you also you used your bike from I heard that you had a hard crash racing your track bike.
Yeah.
And at that point you couldn't ride your bike anymore. And that made you realize that riding your bike was a vehicle to run away from your problems. That's how I understood it.
Exactly that. I was using it as that tool rather than using it to make sense of my issues. It was you're going away to distract yourself, but you still have to come back to the issues. But when you come back to it, especially at that kind of time, when you have no energy, you haven't processed any of your emotions, you still have the same problems, you've just been distracting yourself, it makes everything worse, being fatigued too. So rather than using it as a distraction, I use it to process because it's a beautiful sport. The more you make it something that you use to run away from things, the more you hate it in itself. I've seen it too many times, people who have been amazing at riding bicycles and they just stop one day and never return to the sport. I understand that connect and I never want that for myself.
So people who face similar problems, what would you give them as an advice? Like, of course, it's probably not said in one sentence, but like a small little tip you can give, like a blueprint, what they could do.
I would say if you're starting to hate it and you're struggling mentally, try to remember why you started riding a bike. Don't think about what you have to do or what you want to do. Think about why you started, because when you remember some of your first bike rides as a kid, you remember, the curiosity, you had stabilizers, you were wandering around, the world was so small. Rather than looking at the massive world through this tiny lens, switch it around. make your lens wider and your world smaller. And then that way you can process exactly what you need to, because a lot of the times we try to look at the bigger picture through these tiny little lenses. And when you're focused on just the problems, you can't see anything, you know? So just take a step back and switch it up if you can and have the capacity to.
That's good advice for life in general, I would say. But yeah.
Yeah, honestly, it's my mantra almost.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about riding your bike, but it could be anything, of course. But yeah, moving and enjoying what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
Duke, would you consider yourself an influencer in any way?
It's an interesting term, because before influencers were a thing on the internet, I just did stuff. I made videos, took photos, created community. But I guess that's what I am now, because whenever I make a video about anything, somebody will be asking the questions of, oh, what helmet are you wearing? What glasses are you wearing? What shoes are this? What shoes are that? And for me, it's just like, I'm just living my life and making a video. Like, I like to, it's like a visual diary almost. So I guess I'm an influencer now. It's a weird space to be in, because cycling never used to be like that. It would be you're an athlete and that's it. There'd be no other side to it. But now it's become this thing where you have to be an athlete and an influencer and all these other things. So it's an interesting space, but it's pretty cool because you meet some very creative and talented people.
So you feel certain pressure now almost about your content that you put out? Because you feel the pressure from people expecting something from you?
I used to, and then I had to take a break from that stuff. I was like, I can't create something about life if I'm not living my life and I'm not actually doing what I believe in. So I had to get rid of that pressure. It took a very long time, a lot of therapy actually, for me to be able to see how I see things now, how I do. So there's no pressure at all. It's do what you want to do. There's no pressure on that. Like, you have the control. You make the decision. So if I want to go and race Unbound gravel next year, for example, there's no pressure on me, but I know that I want to train. I know I want to show up. So it's more like that. It's positive rather than being like, I have to do these things.
What do you think people seek when they start following you?
I want people to seek. I think they're just seeking something outside of the norm of cycling, because you wouldn't normally see a Black person with as many bikes as I do doing what I do, or being able to tap into the things that I can. So I guess when people come to my page, they're looking for something familiar, but not as familiar that you'd find in the spaces of before. I don't know if that makes sense. And I guess people they're seeking familiarity outside of the norm, essentially. That's what I would hope. Mm-hmm. And I hope people feel normal when they come to my page, because I'm so open about a lot of things, not too many things, a lot of things like mental health and like ailments, ADHD, autism, all those kind of things. So I just want people to have an understanding, because when you are open, it means conversations. And I hope that even in one piece of content and somebody goes and has a conversation about it with somebody else, they've learned something new. That's the hope. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, from my perspective, so I was drawn to you because I found you visually very interesting. Like how the way you dress, the way you ride your bike and everything. And then later, you know, when I got a little bit deeper, I saw that you also a much deeper person, that you're not a shallow like influencer that just carries brands, but you have much more to your character. And I think people can connect through that. So that's also the reason why we reached out to you and wanted to have you on the show, because I think that's quite cool. Yeah.
Amazing. That means I'm doing something right. Yeah, I understand I understand things being aesthetically pleasing and looking cool and structured, but everyone says like social media isn't real life, but it should be real life. It's not necessarily just portraying life in this, lovely sunny day, because not every day is like that. If social media is real because it's a part of our lives, we post things that happen in our lives on there. So why shouldn't we be as real as we are in real life on the internet? You want to connect with people. You want people to see things differently, because at the end of the day, social media, the internet, it's a tool. It's the way for us to connect from one side of the world to the other. Like, we're doing this right now because of the internet and social media. That's real, you know?
Exactly. So because you've been very real, as far as I can tell, have you ever been confronted with hate? Because there's weird people out there. Whenever you're honest,
Yep.
whenever you show yourself, some people cheer you for that. I would say I hope the majority does that, but there's still some weird people who give you shit for that. Have you experienced something like that?
Oh yeah, big time. But what I've learned to understand is I do the things that I do not from malice, but to help people. And if somebody wants to be horrible, that's on them, nothing to do with me. You came to a space on the internet that I reside in to try to bring me down. And it makes me realize that anybody who's tried to do that to me, I've never been envious of. I've never wanted their life or anything that they want or they have. I've never wanted any of that. So for me, it's why would I take advice from somebody that I do not want anything from? It kind of makes no sense, because they're not giving you constructive criticism. They're usually just being mean. So
probably very miserable
I'm okay
people
with
as
it
well.
now. Right? Like, why would you want to be horrible to somebody? Like, I don't understand it.
I mean, still, it's probably pretty, sometimes not very easy to just not focus on all these kind of comments or whatever it is. And I mean, you found a tool there. How to I don't know, to ignore these kind of things, or do you embrace them and just I don't know. How do you deal with it?
For me, it depends on the mood I'm in. Like where I'm at now, it's if somebody is usually talking nonsense and it's not constructive, I'm not going to waste my time trying to convince them of something that they're already adamant on. So I either block or just don't engage, because we're not here to have a conversation if you're actually coming to me with malice. It's block and disengage. And one other thing that, just disengage in general. It makes no sense to me as to why I would want to give somebody that energy. 100%. So it's just easier to just let them be, because they're looking for attention. They want something from you. So if you just don't give them anything, what are they going to do?
And is it mainly is it mainly people racist, or is it because you're open about your health issues? So what is the main reason these weirdos that
it's usually a combination of a lot of things. It starts usually with racism, and then they try to emasculate me or make fun of me and like try to make me feel small. But it's like, well, you came here. I didn't come to you. Like, I'm trying to understand. And the thing that people don't understand with the internet as well, it's when you're like leaving these comments and messaging people like that, it's like showing up to their door. So if 100 people send me messages about one thing, it's like me opening my front door and talking to 100 people. But what they don't realize is they're not the only ones talking. It's the people from across the world messaging as well. People need to remember that we're all human, People forget that, unfortunately, with the internet. We're human beings with feelings and emotions.
Yes. Yeah. On our previous episode, I don't know if you're aware of Alina Jäger, if you know her, Clipped in and Free.
Yeah,
we were also talking about this.
Yeah.
She, it's weird. These people who are out there and are openly on the internet, they face hate and sexism and all that crap all the time. It is weird. And we should also not give these people too much of a platform here now. So,
No.
But it's still interesting to hear what the issues are. It's saddening.
Yes, especially like with misogyny in cycling too. It's ridiculous because cycling is a male-centered sport, and in order for things to change, especially on the women's side, men need to understand that it's not appropriate to mansplain, it's not appropriate to make inappropriate comments. Just let women have their spaces and let cycling grow for them. It's not a thing for us to be like, oh, you're doing this wrong, or you need to raise your saddle height, or this or that. That's not the way to talk to people. You wouldn't talk to a man that way. So why do you think it's appropriate to do it to a woman, Yeah, it's one of those things.
It's weird. But I believe, and that was also a little bit the topic on the previous episode, is that I believe cycling is becoming more and more inclusive. Alina then also shared, I wasn't aware of this, that there's this race in Austria that is a mixed race where women and male, they start together, and also the results are not separated. And this year's apparently
amazing.
The first 2 or first 3 places were all women. So they beat the men.
Amazing.
So I wasn't aware of this race. It's in Austria somewhere, but seems to be a cool thing. So it's all going in the right direction, you know. And that's why it is also so important to have people like you on board to actually advocate for this. Which brings me a little bit to my next question. So you're strongly advocating, of course, also for gender and also, of course, race equality. You even have the great Martin Luther King's face and some of his quotes on your brand new Factor bike frame. I think it's super great. But yeah, and this year, of course, we had the first Black rider to win a Tour de France stage. We, of course, have the Legion team in Los Angeles and this Amani team here in, where is it, in Ethiopia? Where is it? Kenya. Yeah. Kenya.
Oh, Kenya. Yeah, Eton, Kenya.
But still, it feels like there is not many Black people or people of color on bikes. Why do you think that is?
Cycling is an expensive sport, and that's one of the barriers too. And if we look at ex-colonial countries, especially in Africa, they're still being exploited for like resources and having to pay back reparations of the past. It's tough. It's kind of hard. It's very difficult to build an economy or like build something of that kind of structure and have it be at a grassroots level and progress as fast as the West necessarily. And I even think about the Commonwealth Games, for example. How many African teams showed up and have to crowdfund for their money? And they show up with bikes that have been given to them with like, they're still riding. I'm not to like say that bikes are bad, but they're riding on rim brake bikes, all different brands, all kit that's been passed on to them. It should be, these are athletes and they're treated the way they're treated exactly the same athletes are treated over here, like in the West. It should be they have a support. They have like a program that helps them grow. That's what's important about like Team Amani, because they have the Black Mamba cycling. So you start from young and you elevate to that level. We need more of those kind of things, because the idea of equality is something that's been going around in my mind for a while. It's just because you see one or two Black people, you don't necessarily understand what it's taken for them to get to that place. It won't be necessarily the same as you. We've both done the training, but unfortunately, with the way that the world works and the things that we have to face, the training is not enough sometimes. You know, you can do the training, but then you'll face the financial block, and then you'll face the visa block and the immigration block. And sometimes you only be able to enter a country to show up to the race. Those are the kind of things that the West doesn't necessarily understand or think about. And it's a perspective that I hope a lot more people do think about and try to make easier.
Maybe it could be good to bring the bike sport a little bit more to Africa than the Africans to the bike sport in the US or Europe or something. That would be maybe
what Amani's doing
a way.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the beautiful thing about it. And that's the beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And as your roots are in Ghana, right?
Ghana, yeah.
Do you sometimes visit Ghana?
Yes,
or?
Cycling out there is getting so much better.
That would be my question, yeah.
Yeah, cycling out there is insane. There's a couple of races now. There's a few stage races. I'm hoping to travel out to at least race one of them. But my goal, as in my life goal, I mean, it's a very big dream, but hopefully I can achieve it, is if I get with the brands I'm working with, I would like to build a velodrome in Ghana, an outdoor velodrome, because we have an outdoor velodrome here in the UK, Herne Hill, and I've seen kids from 3 years old. I've seen people who I used to like race with on that velodrome to now they're riding for Team Ineos. Like they're riding for these big pro teams, but they all started in the grassroots level, because when you start grassroots in that way in just a velodrome, you don't need the best bike. You don't need, it's simple maintenance. It's just a steel frame,
one gear,
a chain, you have your crankset, that's it, right? And you learn so many skills. If you can start that, you don't know what like 10 years is going to create. You don't know what kind of athletes you're going to create. So yeah, I would like to create something like that in Ghana that's not so heavily dependent on a lot of things.
Is that still a dream, or are you offensively working on that?
I'm working on it. I'm working on it, actively working on it. I have to be, because it's a part of not necessarily me, but it's something that I want to give to cycling. And I want to give something to cycling other than just representing and showing up. I want something that stays here regardless of like when I'm here anymore. I want it to be still going when I'm not here, or even riding bikes. I want it to be its own thing. I want people to get the same joy that I have from riding bikes from it. That's all I want. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Would be cool.
Cool. Yeah, I checked the brands that you related to is quite an interesting mix because just to name a few: Rapha, Cadex, God and Famous, Mesh, San Francisco, Factor, and then I don't know if Pata is still a thing, but I also saw something about the fashion brand Pata. Is that still?
Yeah. So that was through an interview, and that was like, it was early actually. It's crazy. The brands I work with tend to be people that I know, if that makes any sense. So rather than it's being like, oh, I know this person, they understand me rather than just seeing me as an influencer or a model or this. Like, they know that I want to bring about change. Like Cadex, for example, and helping me tell my story, supporting me with my wheels and helping me go fast. Like, they've opened a world of understanding to me, and through that I'm able to translate that to the people within my community so they can see and understand these like complex things about cycling, because unfortunately there's always like a barrier of understanding, there's a barrier of love and all these kind of things. So yeah, with brands that I work with, I don't want to call them friends, but they're people that are integral, because it's hard sometimes to find the match between integrity and capitalism, essentially, you know.
Yeah, the story with Rapha, you told at the beginning how you guys connected, but for instance, how did you end up? I mean, of course, track biking, Mesh, but how did you connect with these guys? How did this relationship start?
As with Factor,
Mesh, and the God and Famous people.
Mash is the nut. Mash is a crazy story. So when I first started riding fixed gear, I was watching their videos online like 10, 15 years ago. Like, wow, these guys are cool and doing all these cool fixed gear stuff. And I was just following them along their journey. I was like, one day I'm going to go to San Francisco and meet them. So they were doing a 10-year tour, and there was a small group of people over here in London. We were called Fixed Gear London. But Mash reached out to somebody who rose for Fixed Gear London saying that they want to host a 10-year event because they were doing a 10-year tour. They went to Japan, they came to the UK, they went everywhere filming all these bits, and they were coming to London. So they hit up my friend. My friend didn't have any time. Everyone was super busy. So I was like, you know what? I'll host a party and I'll do everything. So I put together a party. It was a massive one. There was a live band, 100, 150 people came, hosted an alley cat, connected with like the exhibition they did at House of Van, screening their film. Yeah, it was a lot. I just went full gas because I knew that I love cycling and I know that I can bring people together to share the same joy that I had. So that happened. They were super happy. And then Mike reached out after he got back to San Francisco. He just sent me a frame set and loads of kit and a helmet. And I was like, whoa, I had no idea that this was going to happen. I didn't think about it. I didn't do it for the reward. It just happened. And I was like, wow, you know? And he's like, I love what you're doing. Keep going with that. And yeah, that's like the thing I love about support.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily just material items. It's things that help you go further and inspire more people and help.
Yeah, and Factor also seems to be a good example to basically support you with products that really kind of represent your character with that frame design, for instance. For people who haven't seen it, definitely go check out his frame design of Duke when you go to his Instagram page. It's really amazing. Yeah. That's cool that these brands support you in such a like personal way. You know, that's
I think the most important thing about the Factor was because it was 2020 when we were working on it, which is funnily enough, it was like towards the end of 2020, not during COVID and after the George Floyd murders in America. And I felt compelled because I'm a poet, I'm a writer, and I tend to write how I'm feeling in this way that rhymes. And I wrote a poem and I shared it with the internet, and everyone was like, wow, because obviously at that time, nobody was working full time. Everybody had time to sit and actually see the world for what it was. And I feel like when my poem went around the internet, people understood and kind of related to what I was trying to portray. And Factor, funnily enough, was they saw that and they were like, this is incredible. So the frame set has my poetry on there too, which is super special to me because I never thought that having a poem on a bike about something that's so near and dear to me would come together so well. It's hard to explain, but
totally
I
makes
never
sense.
thought that something like that would happen.
And right next to Martin Luther King, that is also something, eh? On the bike. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just hoping for change, and it's encapsulating that. It's trying to be the change and actively doing something about it.
How does a typical day of yours look like? Like, probably there aren't typical days most of the times, but if there is like one consensus, would that look like?
So a day, wake up, I take meds, I eat breakfast, chuck on some kit, lycra, depending on the kind of day I'm doing. The night before, I would have prepped my bike up. So I'd go and do 3 or 4 hours straight, lanes, get some training in, just zone 2, zone 3, come back, eat, sit by the laptop, and plan for the future. So if I need to plan a shoot, for example, or if I want to do something for the community, like teaching kids how to fix bikes, which I do in my spare time sometimes as well, it's doing those kind of things. So depending on the day and depending on the urgency of what needs to be done is what gets done that day. So it's usually training and then helping, putting together things, or it's going for a shoot, building a bike, loads of those kind of things. So my days are very busy, but it's important to make downtime.
Yes, but you plan a lot, so.
Yes, I live by my calendar. Honestly, I live by my calendar. And small changes throw me off a lot. So my calendar is super important.
Because also I'm still thinking about the question earlier on with the pressure of having like, because now I don't know, you do this for a living, I guess. So not make this lifestyle make this lifestyle become I don't know, building up too much pressure on you, you know?
How I avoid it being a pressure is because I'm able to do so many things and I can do a lot of them well. It's never just a focus on just one thing. So as long as the cycling's going well, I know that everything else will go well, because if I need to pick up on my writing, for example, I'll just pick up on my writing. If I need to pick up on my modeling jobs, I will reach out to brands, or I'll check my portfolio, or I'll look at my modeling agency, for example, and see if there's anything flexibility there. It's making sure that I'm not just boxed in, because when I'm boxed in, that creates the pressure of just, I have to perform this one thing. But why would you perform one thing when you can do a lot of things? Does that make any sense? So it's like the same way I would change discipline in cycling. If I'm finding road cycling not as fun, I'd ride my gravel bike. It's still cycling, it's still fun, but it's just a different medium, you know? And that's, I mean, I guess it's because I'm neurodivergent. It's how my brain works in kind of systems and makes connections. So that's how I do things in that kind of way. And it's working out.
So, and how do you deal with focus then? When you have all these different things, all these different boxes that you can jump from?
So the thing is, for me, if I'm doing one thing, I make sure that I'm doing it with everything, if that makes any sense. So if I'm here talking to you, I'm not going to be thinking about all the things that I have to do later. No, I'm thinking about, oh, I'm really blessed to be here talking to people across the world. Like, I'm giving this my full focus. And when you give things your full focus in this kind of way, once this podcast ends and I'm thinking about how well it went, I then shift it onto something else and I give that the 100%. But it's always to a limit of understanding. And that's the amazing part about, I guess, understanding my ADHD and how it works with my autism. So it's the connection with those two things.
Yeah, really interesting. You really need to look up Julien and his 8,000 watt things, because there's so many parallels, and I'm pretty sure that each of you would be interested in each other. So yeah,
definitely, I'm gonna hit definitely.
So
cool.
Just out of interest, because somewhere I found I can't I was looking for it to find it again, but was looking your name up, and it says that you were also an art director at Rapha. Is that any true? Because it was no.
Nah.
No, okay, all right.
Future plan from Rapha for you.
With art. Well, maybe. But yeah, it's just being creative. That's why I say that I'm a creative, because I don't necessarily always have the language to put things in the box, but I understand it in a way that people can connect to. And it's the same with art. I love going to galleries. I love art, expression. I love all of those kind of things. Music. Yeah, whatever the medium is, being able to connect to it is one of the things that I hold dearly.
Yeah, your taste for music, I can definitely connect through. Always enjoy it. You're one of the only people when I watch a reel of you where I actually switch the sound on, because I know, okay, I like the music.
Amazing. Yeah, I think I'm going to start making a few playlists and just sharing them with people, because everyone's always like, oh, what song is this? What song is this? It's just, I like music. I like sounds and how it connects and the instrument. Oh, yeah.
So we'll find your playlist on Spotify or what?
Yeah, Spotify for sure.
Okay, I will look them up. Cool. If there's any brand out there right now where you would say that they're doing an awesome job at the moment, or you see potential in, and do you have some sort of best practice brand right now that you think they're standing out with what they do for the biking industry right now?
Honestly, not to sound like, okay, I know I'm an ambassador, but even if I wasn't a Rapha ambassador, I'd say Rapha, because the fact that they're able to support Team Amani and for them doing everything they're doing, like Rapha don't only just help people of color, they put women's rides on, the Women's 100, for example. They do so much, and not just in the UK, but in the States, in Asia, they actually contribute to building the communities. You have the RCC, and never before, especially with somebody as a person of color joining a cycling club, there was always this barrier of when you go there, especially as a Black person, you can't integrate the same because people don't understand where you came from, but you understand where they came from. So there's always like a lot of like explaining you have to do. And Rapha's quite good at creating those safe spaces for conversation and understanding. And it's been amazing. So they're one brand that I love working with because they help. And they understand it could be mutually beneficial to ride bikes and help people. So
that's good, because I think also Rapha is getting a lot of shit recently in the cycling business media, because I think it's a lot of hate out there, because they have been very successful. They have shaped, the design and the fashion in our sport like no other brand, I would say. And now, since it came out that they not maybe super profitable the last years, everybody hits on them and say, see, I told you this is all just a marketing brand, blah, blah, blah. But I'm completely on your side. I see also what they have actually done for the sport and for the community is quite magnificent, and should not be forgotten about. So I hope they get back on track and everything, because I also definitely root for that brand.
Like, they celebrated 20 years. What other cycling brand has been around like that for 20 years and made the massive changes that they've done?
Exactly.
So it's the times. It's after COVID. It's the industry itself. There's so many more competitors. It's the test of time and longevity. It's not necessarily like focusing on one moment. It's looking at the bigger picture and how much they've changed. And that's the incredible part for me.
Do you have maybe any message you would like to share with our audience, mainly still German listeners? But we're trying to get more international people now on board as well. Is there any message you would like to share with people from our sport, from our industry?
Be kind. That's it. It's free to be kind. So why be mean when you can be kind? That's all. If you start with kindness, the world becomes a better place.
Yeah. That's a good last word. 100%. Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, dude.
It's been amazing. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Movement. Branding for the bike industry is an ADLIPS branding studio creation. Content direction and production, Mike Makduszewski and Tim Thiel. Sound, music and editing, Niklas Butzke. Artwork, Marius Burgmann. New episodes appear regularly, irregularly on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, then please consider following the Movement Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating. If you have any questions or comments, use the comment feature below this episode or go to adlips.io and send us a message. Thanks for listening.